All right, so I am now being joined by two of our city councilors, and I know this looks weird on the video, but it'll make sense when we do the audio version. I'm going to go in numerical and alphabetical order. So we'll start with Ward 1. Thank you for joining us once again, Erin Caton.
Hi, nice to be here.
And then we will zoom over to Ward 3 and welcome Michele Richardson. Thank you for joining
Hi,
us.
thank you for having me.
All right. Michelle, I will start with you because I think we've gotten Erin's story about why they didn't just want to run again, or they decided it was in their best interest not to run again. But well, we talked a bit about this before we started, so I think I know what the reason is. But for everyone listening or watching, why did you not want to run again for city council?
I'm actually retiring from the County of Wellington on June the 30th, so it's part of my retirement plan. I also did find that the workload was extremely significantly higher than what I had anticipated when running for council because you think, oh, we're going to have our planning meeting, our committee of the whole, our um, council meeting, and then maybe another meeting. And when you get into 77 meetings a year, it was a little more than I was able to feel like I could commit to on a regular basis.
All right, and Aaron, you've talked a lot about the financial restraints as well, and that's been in meeting on the record. But what were some other considerations you had in deciding whether or not to run again?
The schedule is kind of a combo with the remuneration, right? Because you are asked to do quite a lot of meetings during the year, and there's a lot of daytime meetings, and just being able to interact with the different community groups and be able to attend the things that they want you to attend, and all of the extra, board meetings and everything else. It becomes really, really hard to schedule another job along with that and do what I consider an adequate job for the people who you're trying to represent.
Ballpark it for me. If you were to guess how many requests you get in a month for coffee meeting, community meeting, uh, feedback, or some sort of like meeting with like a stakeholder, town hall, ribbon cutting. How many events do you think you would do it in a month if you could do them all, if time and space weren't a factor?
I think that if I said yes to everything, then I would have something every day.
Something every day.
Yeah.
Michelle, what does that sound about right?
Yeah, almost. And it's sad because I don't want to speak for Erin, but it's sad because those are the things that I was looking forward to
Right.
doing as a new counselor, as being out in the community, welcoming new businesses. And there was not enough time. Those are the things we had to give up in order to get the work done. I
For
found.
sure. Sorry, Aaron, go on.
No, I was just agreeing.
Okay. Well, since I've got Aaron, I'll throw this one to you next. I think what it gets at is that the job, once you're inside, looks a lot different than how it looks outside. And as inside I am, I know that it's very different living the life of a city councilor than and just nitpicking the life of a city councilor and the work of a city councilor. But looking backwards, do you feel like you were prepared enough? And I don't, again, this may speak to a matter of like who prepares you for this. But as you were considering running for office, and wondering what life as a city councilor would look like. Do you think you were well prepared? And do you think there was a way you could have been better prepared if you weren't as well prepared as you thought you were going to be?
I think I was prepared for the type of work that would be done in terms of my qualifications and my ability to do it. I don't think any of us could have been prepared for the reality of council this term because the province changed everything on us, right? There was just so much churn in terms of what they said we should be doing and how often, and even just the change in the budget process added so much time to our schedule and efforts, even though it was technically given to the mayor, because of the procedures that they implemented. It was a lot of back and forth. We had to be in, sometimes very long day meetings. And I was not prepared for the length of the night meetings
Hmm.
and how often that happened. And Now that my daughter's older, it's not as hard because I can, give her a thing and be like, warm this up. But otherwise, you're trying to figure out how to be a parent when your, 2 to potentially 11 p.m. is taken up.
Michelle, the same question to you.
I will agree with Erin. The expectations changed the minute we were elected. I would like to think that I was relatively aware of what I was getting into because I worked in municipal government for the last 20 years and I worked with many councils. I was not prepared for the I was disillusioned in the fact that I thought the ward councillors might work more together. Like I
Mm.
kind of thought, I always liked the two ward councillors per ward because I felt that gives that one person, oh, if they want to go on a vacation, then they've got a ward councillor, a partner there to field the calls and they could sort of work collaboratively like that. And that's not really the case for the majority of the wards. Everybody's quite independent. So that was really surprising to me. Um,
It's interesting.
yes, yeah, and I found it much more difficult, as Erin said, things were the mandates changed right at the beginning, and then they kept changing throughout the term. So that meant twice as much reading and twice as much to learn to understand now this new regulation that's come in. We're changing the OPA from this to that. What does that mean and who all does that affect? So I found it to be an extremely unexpected, large learning curve. And the social issues that were happening, I found took a lot of time and empathy to have to talk to people who were concerned for one group or another group, which again, I don't think was on our radar prior to when we were running.
I want to dig into that in a second, but I want to dig into the other thing that you said, which is counselors, two counselors per ward feels like that should be more of a unit. I'm curious, and I'm not asking you to cast aspersions or anything, but how much of that is maybe, your ward mate Phil Alt has enjoyed his position for a couple of terms. Maybe he is a little more settled, a little more seasoned. He has his rhythms. Um, is that something that, I guess how do you imagine that could have been massaged better? Like, I don't want to say whose fault is it because that sounds like,
No.
we're playing tit for tat. But I mean, is there a way, even if it was like city supported, like a way that relationship could have been better?
And I do think you hit the nail on the head when you said city supported, because it has nothing to do with my political beliefs or Phil's political beliefs. I was just had my own thought that we would sort of through the city be united as a team. And you two have this ward, and is hey, I'm going away for a couple of weeks. If I put my out of office, can I put should I put you as my if you going away? If you need immediate assistance, please contact Erin or Phil or somebody like that. But there doesn't seem to be that connection. And then when you're away, you come back to quite a number of emails, and some maybe your ward mate has replied to, some they haven't. And I found there a little bit of lack of cohesion with understanding, and then it just makes more work. But it would
Right.
be a great if the city sort of set that up to say, okay, you guys, you're in this forum. You don't have to agree. It's not about your political thought processes, but to work as a team, this is going to make it a lot easier for you if you sort of cover each other when you're off and spell each other and you sort of know where people are.
Right,
And I
right, right.
think that would help a lot.
I'm gonna fire this one back at Aaron too, because I think looking at you and Dan side by side, very different people, very different styles, very different swagger, let's say. Um, do you feel like you and Dan were the cohesive unit maybe you could have been or maybe you should have been? And how would you, looking backwards, is there a way you might have changed that?
No, we weren't.
Fair
But
enough.
I, no, but not, that's not to say that we didn't work together, right? I think it just depends on the topic. And I think Michelle's right that there's not a structure set up for you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it falls all over the place because some of the regulations about council are not even within the city's purview, right?
Right.
It is provincial. So in terms of attendance and everything else, those are provincial legislation, and the city can't really do anything about that. And what we have in place is more about behavior in terms of the Integrity Commission, and that's about us working together. So if we had conflicts, then that could be addressed. But um, working together is optional.
Mhm.
And you're kind of at the mercy of who contacts who. And I think that, I am really, really good at email
Right.
and apparently is very good at the phone. I'm bad at the phone. I apologize. But I am like I've got a lot of stuff going on. I don't even remember to charge my phone half the time. So people who are complaining about that, that is legitimate. And I get, I'll give them that. But in terms of us working together, if there's a particular topic that we're both aligned on, then we've done that. And we have different construction meetings and other things that are set up by staff, but it's up to the individual counselors to be able to make that meeting.
Right.
So if we're not both there at the same time, then we're not going to be communicating. And if you don't have a social relationship, because we don't have an office together, right?
Right.
Nobody goes to the same office, and that's usually where you would find that kind of cohesion. And so that kind of speaks to why it should be, in my opinion, more of a full-time role than a part-time role, because then you would be seeing each other more often, and that kind of collaboration would come a little bit more naturally.
Come a little bit more naturally. Yeah. In terms of like the preparation, I'm going to throw this one to Michelle first because, you come from a particular background, you come from a particular, um, you know, career path, does not necessarily intersect. I mean, Ken knows a lot about planning because he d does landscape architecture. Um, the other 11 of you do not have that, scholastic background, but when it comes to like sitting in council meetings and you're presented with things like planning and you're presented with things like, you were saying about social issues. Erin obviously brings a lot of expertise, firsthand expertise on matters of accessibility, but that again is something not the other 11 members of council not necessarily have. So when you are tucking into these big issues, did you feel like you had the like support, not just of staff, but anyone who's like expertise in the field? Did you feel like you had an easy time getting the information you needed to make good decisions, or was that tougher than anticipated?
And I'll say 100% it was tougher than anticipated. And I say, Erin, you and I should have been in the same ward because I'm great on the phone and suck at emails. So we would have been a great pair. But Erin also made a really good point of the fact that we don't have a lot of time together as a council. And that's where that part of me, that's what, excuse me, I found it really difficult to get the information that I needed because we didn't have opportunities to sit down in maybe groups of 3 or 4 and say, hey, what do you think about this? And tell me why you think that. And gee, okay, I'm not seeing that at all. Help me, that sort of ability to seek to understand other people's views. I found that really difficult to be able to get that information without going around and seeking it and trying to find, picking up a phone call or calling someone or, and then there was not a lot of time to do that because we were busy reading all the things that we had and attending the meetings. And that was one of my biggest challenges. And I'm not sure how I would get past that.
Mm. And Aaron, before I let you get a crack out of this, I just want to add this caveat, which is I think you and a lot of people appreciate this role you play. You're the accessibility person. You're the person who's like the even if no one asks your opinion, you jump in and raise the point. And so in along with like having the information you need, is it also hard to sort of be the sort of the council expert, like the minister of accessibility, I guess, on council because you're the one asking the questions because you have that lived experience.
Yeah, anybody who has an issue with accessibility across the city, they contact me. And yeah, I have an extra kind of load in that regard. And because I work in tech and I'm vice chair of corporate services, which handles tech within the city, I get a lot of that stuff too. Um, so, but I also really, really like it. right? And I want people to have the best information on that topic, so I'm kind of happy to do it. But it does take a lot of the time up. I think that in terms of just having to learn a lot, you're also kind of at the mercy of when different plans become due.
Mm,
So we have plans that are kind of on 5-year, 10-year, 15-year cycles, and almost everything came up for renewal during our term. Like we had to approve a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of going out on tours to all of the different departments. And as a counselor, you're one of the people who has to know everything about the city. If you're a staff member, you have to know your department, but we have
right.
to know everything, like us and Tara. And uh, so I do think it was good for me to get information. It's just some of the topics that we're learning about, especially about accessibility, are things that are in flux just for society. We've been doing human rights things and equity for a short amount of time compared to how long we've existed.
Right.
And so if you're not somebody who has the background information and you're not looking into it all the time, then I think it would be very hard to have all the information to make a decision on the topic.
Again, you raise an interesting point and something I wanted to get to, which is, you know, and this goes for anybody who's running for any office. And that there's a tricky balance. I'd also say it goes to anyone like going for a job because you have great big plans, whether that's you're going to be, editor of some magazine or a city councilor. You have great big plans, but you're also sort of dictated by circumstance. And so when we're talking about the job, and I'll start with Erin here, do you feel like being a city councilor as it ended up and as according to your experience, it is more about managing the things that come your way, whether that is like the plans on the specific cycle or what's happening in the news or you are more a manager, that there is very little actually self possession in the job than people would like. You are a victim of circumstances as a city councilor, I guess.
Well, you're not allowed to do anything on your own in terms of directing staff. The only staff directions you can give are as a council, right? And you have to go through the process and you have to know the process. If you want to get changes made, then, you have to get approval of the chair or the department and you move through the process. So it's a long kind of path. And I don't know anyone who expects government to be fast or easy or not to have that. And when folks get upset because I haven't been able to move something forward quickly enough, I explain to them that you kind of want that. You don't want someone
Right.
to unilaterally decide something because it may not be the thing that is actually good for people. It may be something in completely the opposite direction. So I'm not opposed to it taking time. But when I started, I had this big spreadsheet and I was like, these are all the things I want to get done. And I was told it was too ambitious. And I managed to get it all done, or I tried and I didn't win. But I got it through in terms of trying at the very least. And I think it's doable. I just don't think that is a fair expectation of someone in a part-time position.
Hmm. Michelle, did you have a spreadsheet and how is it doing?
I am not the email girl. I am the old-fashioned. I would have a pen and paper in my list,
I
and
hear you. I hear you.
I took I didn't have any. Again, when I ran, it was like affordable housing, but affordable housing was not what affordable housing is today, right? It was trying to bring the cost of homes down, not we actually need X number of homes. That was very, very different. And advocating for the new hospital because we're desperate need of that. But again, I will echo Erin again. Very, very painful trying to move things forward. And parking was one of the ones that I've always said, can we look at oh, it's coming up in the 2027 review, and I'm thinking, well, that's 3 years from now and people are messaging me now.
Right.
And I think one of my biggest eye openers was the fact of how little influence we actually really have as municipal councilors. I chose municipal government because it was the closest to the people. I'm a people pleaser typically. So I'm like, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And I found that there was very little that I could actually help anybody with other than to listen and talk and be that person and understand. And I found that really difficult.
Yeah, dig in a bit on that because I'm going to borrow something I've heard Erin say, some of Erin's wisdom that when you leave your house, you're a city councilor, or when the mayor leaves his house, he's the mayor. There's really no delineation. People approach you as such, and given the difficulties in accomplish anything, as no matter what the issue is, as a city councilor, how do you manage it when people will walk up to you and go, Michelle, I have beef with XYZ, and you say, well, X is coming up in the 2027 staff work plan. Y is out of our jurisdiction, and Z, this is a completely new thing to me. And people want an answer now. And you are Michele Richardson, Ward 3 City Councilor, imbued with limited powers and
Right.
responsibilities.
Yeah. And I think that's just what you have to do. It's just a matter of, I'm a firm believer in, a conversation is worth a million emails. And I would get quite lengthy emails from people. And I think like Erin would be able to respond beautifully. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't reply back to this. Like so much here. So I would reply back, hey, there's a lot in this email. A lot of it's pretty complicated. Happy to have a conversation. And they'll reply back to me, I have no time for a conversation. I'm a busy person. Right. And it's like, okay, well,
They
good
had
luck.
time to write the email, though.
Exactly. And maybe they're faster than me, but it probably took them 20 minutes to write the email with all of their thoughts. But yeah, I'm shocked at the number of people that are not willing to have that personal conversation. But the ones who are willing to have the personal conversation, I find that once you sort of explain and they understand the process, it's like, oh, well, that's kind of crappy. I said, yeah, it is, but
Right.
that's the way the world works. And then they're like, okay, I get it. And I find that's where a lot of the frustration and the negativity that comes from residents is they're not fully understanding of everything that's impacting the decision or what's happening or why things are going in a certain direction.
Erin, how do you handle the TLDRs when you get them?
Uh, well, I'm kind of I will create you a whole project plan kind of person, right? And that's kind of how I respond. And sometimes that works for the person, and sometimes they find that overwhelming. Sometimes I get accused of being AI because of they're like, you just did this with AI. And I'm like, well, thank you for thinking that AI is modeled after my behavior, but
Yeah.
um, and you do your best, right, to try to point them in the direction. And sometimes like Michelle said, the problem is not solvable by you, and you can't do the process for someone. And it is hard because sometimes people want things that are touching on a lot of different departments. Like we had an issue with trails in like my area being taken out, and it was because it was on GRCA land. And
Right.
then we had to talk through, here's how you do that, and this is what you need to do, and it's going to cost this, and this is why this happens. And then ultimately, um, people either accept that and try the process, or they get real mad at you and they decide that you are very unhelpful and you're trying to put roadblocks. And I'm like, I didn't put them there. They existed. I just showed you where they were. I made you a map. And uh, there's not much I can do about that part of it because that is well above my level to solve.
No, I hear that, and I do wonder if there's sort of a feedback loop because we're in the middle of this thing right now where the province is consolidating power at the conservation authorities and at the school boards, and one wonders if the public is just kind of okay with that because they email their city councilor and it's explained that these things are in different silos. And so maybe it just makes sense at the end of the day. We're like Mega City 1, Ontario, and there's one stop fits all, regardless of the loss of local control and local democracy. That's sort of more philosophical, but I mean, um, I do wonder if that just sort of makes more sense to people than the way we've decided to establish appropriate jurisdictions. Anyway, I don't know if you want to if any either of you want to respond to that. That's just me throwing. Yeah, Erin, you raised your hand quite kindly.
Um, yeah, I think that depends on if you think that the person doing the consolidation is actually going to solve your problem,
Sure.
right? And in my experience, just with those other systems as a parent, um, and as a homeowner, that's not been the case. I found, at least for me, the most willingness to work through and try to find the solution, even if you can't find it. I found that the local level is where I've gotten the most help trying to work through, create that map and
Sure.
show me where roadblocks are so that I can kind of see because um, them existing versus the top layer actually solving it for you is very different, right?
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the job itself, and I'll start with Michelle on this one. To get a feeling of what you're taking away from your time on city council, what is one thing that sort of you will point to as like, I take this as a point of pride. I help accomplish this during my tenure as a city councilor. And what is one thing, I don't know if regret's the right word, but maybe there was this like one challenging thing that you're leaving behind that you wish you could have solved before council rises for the last time in October.
That's a good question, Adam. I have something coming forward in May, which is having the city recognized as a Glowing Hearts employer.
Oh,
So that's for the reservists, so that we have a reservist leave. So anybody who needs to is a reservist that needs to be deployed at some point, we would allow that as a job protected leave. And then I'm going to hope to see that we can do a top up for those salaries, similar that we do to pregnancy and parental leaves.
oh, neat.
So yeah, so that's coming probably in May, and it's something that I will be very proud of because I hold our military in very high regard, and just the state of the world these days. I think it's going to be something that we need to put in the forefront a little bit more for Canadians. Our Canadian military is very quiet and intentionally quiet,
Mm.
but
Hmm.
I think that they would do themselves quite well by being a little more visible and letting people know how active our Canadian military is, because they have been incredible. They've done some incredible things over the last, 30 years, but nobody really knows what they're up to.
Okay.
So that will be something that I will be proud to leave. I'm actually proud of the library, and the community centers. Those are the things that um, mean a lot to me, because they are, to me, they are of the most greatest use of the majority of residents.
Sure.
So, and what am I going to be frustrated with? Is that what you said? What
That was, yeah. Yeah.
didn't I get done? Well, I think we all have to. I don't know. I shouldn't speak for everybody, but affordable housing is a big hole in your heart, right? We wish we could do it faster and better, and um, but it's gonna take a number of years to really get to a good place with that.
Okay.
I think we'll get there. We will get there
Yeah.
eventually, but there's a lot of things that play with that too.
No, I mean you can never get there fast enough. But
Yeah.
Aaron, to you the same question. And thank you for the scoop, by the way, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Um, I'm really, really proud of all the accessibility stuff we've got moved forward. There is not a staff plan that gets presented to us now that doesn't have a comment about accessibility and equity in it. And I have spent so much time in back meetings with staff just educating them on things
Mm.
in terms of why I feel the way I do and the history of the federal legislation and the provincial legislation that kind of controls the landscape, that approves the policies that they do their jobs based off of, and kind of explaining where the holes are in those and why I ask for the things that I do. And I love the fact that we've got a new parks plan that has accessible playgrounds within certain distances now to neighborhoods. I've gotten more approved. I got that freaking terrible bus stop down across from the East Side Library. I have a little fake sidewalk in the meantime. Like it works and it's accessible, but it was above and beyond what our policy usually does because we've got them tied into developments to make them more fiscally responsible, which I totally understand, but you still need to get to the bus stop. So
Yes.
I'm really glad that I got a lot of that work in and kind of holding the line on some of the transit stuff, even though we are not there nearly, but keeping it from getting pushed out as much as I could. I'm very proud of those actions. And in terms of what I wish I could have done, um, I had some issues with the public space use bylaw. I think that
Mm,
was well known at the time. And I wish that we could have gotten more housing and supports in place
mm,
so that we didn't need to police where people are because they would have other places to just be.
right. That's all fair. My next question kind of reverses that because it's not about what you've done, but about how the job has changed you. So, Erin, how do you think you personally are different as a person, not as a city councilor, but as a human being, um, having done this work for 4 years? How's the job changed you?
Uh, I find it really, really awkward to just go up to random people. Before, and because like I wasn't in a public position, right? And so like doing the door to door and the just randomly going up to someone. And I think this is just a matter like a matter of my own neurodivergence than anything else. But it really did push me kind of out of my comfort level because as you kind of
Mm,
called back to everywhere you go, you're the counselor, right? So someone's going to talk to you no matter what. And any social event is a work event for you now.
right.
So just being more outwardly social and less awkward. Not that that's really translating right now, but
You're doing great. You're doing great, kid.
thank you.
Uh, Michelle, the same question to you. How has being a city councilor changed you for the better or the less awkward?
Oh, and poor Erin, I'm the polar opposite of Erin. I'm happy to talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime because I have the gift of gab, and I'm much more happier doing that than emailing. And but I am shocked at, as I said, I'm a people pleaser, so it has hurt my heart a little bit to know the number of people that, regardless of the explanations that they had, or that you could explain, that they still think you're doing a terrible job, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
that hurts a little,
sure.
or some pretty nasty comments. And I have always led uh, through my career with a seek to understand. So whether you agreed or disagreed, but seek to understand first, and that's sort of fared me very well. And I'm shocked at the number of people that don't seek to understand and are so quick to judgment. So that's been a little hurtful to me.
Has that gotten better or worse the longer you've been in office?
I think worse.
Erin, you think so?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like I'd had just being a very online person and
Mm,
with my, you know, social circles that I kind of run in, I had that before, but it was not like this, right? It's the misinformation and disinformation and the purposeful amount of it that kind of goes out there where people will just kind of twist it to give their own view, and then folks don't really stop to consider the source uh,
mm.
when they're taking that information in is quite interesting.
I'm gonna leave that hang there because I think we can imagine who we might be talking about in some ways. Maybe to start winding us down here. Obviously, because you two are leaving vacant seats, I'm sure you have been approached for your sage wisdom about from others about how best they might proceed. So, I mean, to anyone who might be listening, no matter their ward, frankly, no matter what public office they might be seeking, Michelle, we'll start with you. What would your advice be to someone who's thinking about running?
Yeah, and I've
Oh,
had it a couple of people, and the people that have approached me would be amazing, amazing counselors. I said, absolutely. Does help those people who have the planning background as well. I told them that that was a big challenge for me. Poor Krista Walkie, I'm sure she's tired of hearing from me, but um, I said you have to really have a little bit of that thicker skin, so you're not going to be able to please everybody. It doesn't matter what you do or how good work that you do. Set your boundaries as to what you can commit to, and have that sort of ahead of time, because there are much more meetings than what you think you're committing to. So I gave them the heads up that, and then just the amount of reading and research that you have to do. So the people who have approached me all have other jobs, so that would be extra for them. So I give them a lot of credit for reaching out and saying, hey, you did it. How did you find it? I said, I found it terribly difficult. It was a lot of work that, a lot of time away from my family. So you have to be prepared for that, because I don't see that getting better. The
Mm,
nice thing is that all our meetings are recorded. If you do miss a meeting, you don't have to, worry about that. You can go back, you can watch the meeting, you can catch up with stuff, and with the agenda or the council packages and meeting packages that come, all the information's there for you. But it's a big decision, but it's also there's a lot of good. I'm not unhappy about my experience. I've really enjoyed being on council. I've learned so much. So you just have to be prepared to know that there's going to be more work than you anticipate.
I sometimes imagine Crystal walking in a sunroom surrounded by a Faraday cage that zaps all signals out of the air with gentle harp music you hear at spas playing. Um,
Absolutely.
that's her weekend.
Yes.
Um, Erin, what advice do you have?
I also want to shout out to Krista Walkie because, oh my God, like what a horrible time to be the planner with the problem. Anyway, I think that uh, my advice to folks is know what you can change, right? Don't go into it thinking that you're going to be able to do a bunch of things that you can't. Understand the landscape, understand the intersections between the other layers of government and the other agencies that control land around you. Um, because you want to have a realistic idea of what you can do in the job. And I think that it's important to know that you're one person on a council and you're not going to win all the things you want to win. So you need to be able to uh, lose gracefully and understand that creating nemesises amongst your co-counselors is a really bad approach to getting things done, because not everybody's going to think the same thing. Not everyone's going to have the same approach or values, and you still have to work together and you have
Yeah.
to get everybody's vote when you need something done. So, um, being very angry when you don't get your way is going to result in you not getting your way more. So you have to be professional and know how to talk to people and work with them, even if you disagree.
And I will say that that's something Mayor Guthrie mentioned at Breezy Breakfast when he was doing his farewell Q&A there, is that he let some losses simmer a little too hard in his first term as mayor. Um, okay, last question, and maybe the most obvious one. I mean, you two have decided not to seek office now, but does that like preclude like seeking? I mean, not necessarily running for city councilor again, but I mean, you have a taste for politics now. Can you really say never again? Erin, do you have no further political ambitions?
Um, I want to fix things and I like to help people. And I can't say that I wouldn't want to do that in either on council if the circumstances, timing, paycheck change over time or some other level. I'm currently nonpartisan, so it just kind of depends on what goes around and different opportunities. But I'm always going to be around giving my opinion because that is not something I'm shy about.
Do you know how you want to stay involved yet, or is that something that's just going to be organic or an issue to issue or
I have some ideas on how to work through some of the cohesiveness with some of the groups that are frequent flyers in terms of council issues. I think that there's a way to get people working together and um, have team kind of meetings outside of council, and that's something that
Mm.
I'm looking into working on just as a side project. And I'm always, you're gonna see me delegating all the time, Adam. So
No, I mean that sounds great. That sounds interesting. Michelle, in terms of, I mean, you talked about retiring. I will note that there are a lot of retired people who still sit on city councils. Your ward mate is one of them. But
Yeah.
you know, have you lost the taste for politics, or like, do you intend to stay involved somehow? And how are you thinking about doing that?
I've found that I love the board work more so than the council work. I feel like I can get more done and get more. Prior to going on council, I was on the patient family advisory committee at the general hospital. So I was on there for a few years. And then I was also on a subcommittee of them that was planning for the new hospital. So that was 4 years ago. And we're still no further ahead. So I could see myself doing some board work, um, public health board, police services board, back at the hospital, something along that, where it's a little bit easier to see those changes that you want get moved forward. And I'm looking for a part-time job. So if anybody out there's hiring, give me a shout.
Okay. We will see who is taking resumes in the months to come.
In the
But
months to come.
but for now, I just want to say thank you to both of you for all the time you've put on city council, all the time you've put in answering my questions or doing appearances on open sources or this pod. And yeah, it's there's still a busy couple of months ahead, but I'm glad that both of you decided to put your names forward, and I'm glad you both decided to do this. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll see where it goes from here. So to wrap things up, Erin Caton and Michele Richardson, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks,
thank
Adam.